I just think that it's interesting to see how we're so early on in the war at just the different interests that can begin to show up as just we begin to speculate. Um, let's move into cyber power and cyber threats. Let's see here. There's a number of Israeli cyber startups that actually have been extremely successful in both protecting Israeli data interests, but also have in some ways been used to breach data privacy in other camps. Could you speak about Israel and the current cybersecurity threats that face it because of the war situation?
Well, you're raising two different issues. One was the Israel's involvement or Israeli companies' involvement in offensive cyber uses abroad and in some cases misuses. And the other issue is now cyber during the war. I can say that the Iranians have been using cyber. They've tried to attack many Israeli sites. They haven't been very successful. They're using the internet as a means of recruiting agents in Israel. And here we've discovered and arrested a couple of tens of people already in recent months and during the war. It's horrible to think that Israelis were willing to do this. They all knew who they were getting paid by, and these were people who were all in, let's say, difficult financial straits, and so they were willing to sell out, but very, very disturbing. And they're using cyber information warfare as a means of getting their message out in the world and trying to undermine the Israeli position, weaken the American position. In terms of the first issue, we're talking mostly about the NSO company. They're the ones who were accused of most of the violations. Now, I understand the feeling of, they were getting into private citizens' phones. There's a violation of privacy here. And there were a couple of cases where it went beyond violations of privacy. It was used by a couple of unsavory regimes to deal with their opponents, and one or two people may even have died as a result. So it's not nice. There's no doubt about that. But the countries that were criticizing Israel, the US and all of Europe, and I'm not talking about the rest of the world, sell billions and billions of dollars worth of weapons to the Arab countries and to other dictatorial regimes. And these weapons kill people. I mean, they're designed to kill people. It's not that, yes, there were one or two unfortunate cases where somebody paid with their life. Here you're talking potentially mass casualties. Why do you sell the most advanced weapons in the world? So, first of all, Israel clamped down on this and ended it essentially completely, and some companies have gone out of business as a result. NSO is a shadow of what it was. But I think there was a double moral standard here. I think the issue gained so much attention around the world, and it was really remarkable because it was Israel. And any time today in the last decade that you can get a headline which discredits Israel in any way, then that's a good way to sell newspapers. So I think we have to put that whole issue in certain perspective.
Why is the world so after Israel? Like, why is Israel always such a focus, even though it's such a small spot on the map? And why is it always judged? Why is there's such a discrepancy in the expressions of love and admiration for the country and the people?
I looked up some time ago, and if I remember correctly, the figure is that Israel is 0.0001% of the world's population. My only question here is if I'm not missing a zero. I think I got it right. So a small dot on the map, a small minuscule piece of the global population, and boy, do we receive a disproportionate share of world attention and world enmity. And I'm not going to talk about the Arab world. The reasons there are obvious. It's military, it's cultural, it's religious, it's various things. In the West, the picture is far more complicated. There is still a strong base of support for Israel as a democracy, as a liberal society, for let's say the older generations, because young people who grew up in the post-67 era don't really remember this, but of the old pioneering, daring Israel, courageous, and the ingathering of the exiles, and of course, Holocaust sympathy. There is still a strong base of support for Israel on that basis. But Israel, for the last few decades, and if you want, you can say since 67, has been pursuing policies towards the Palestinians and the West Bank that the world doesn't accept, correctly or incorrectly. I'm not going into the substance now. And there's no doubt that the world misunderstands a lot of the issue, doesn't understand the issue, just has very little information, and misunderstands what they do know. There is no issue that has undermined Israel's image more than the settlements issue. Limited its West Bank policy to the security dimension, that actually is understood. Maybe not fully, not properly, but it's understood. But settlements, no one in the world, including our best friends, understands that. And not only do they not understand why we're doing it, but they view it as something which, if Israel is supposed to be a Jewish and democratic country, if that's a raison d'etre, how are you doing something which seems to undermine those two very things? And you have generation after generation that's grown up in the West hearing this narrative about the settlements, viewing Israel as a occupier, an increasingly brutal occupier. We used to talk about the benevolent occupation. Let's be honest, it's been a few decades since it's been benevolent, maybe because we had no choice, but it's been an increasingly not nice, if not brutal occupation. Then you have the Arab, the Palestinian information, PR onslaught, call it whatever you want. And Israel's accused of apartheid and genocide and every kind of discrimination and horrible thing you can think about. None of this has any bearing in reality. But we all know that when you repeat lies often enough, look, you see, by the way, in all of the polling in the West, including in the US, as age goes down, support for Israel plummets. People 60 and above still have a warm corner in their hearts for Israel, but have a growing problem with that. And young people do not. And we saw it on the campuses.
Concerning, but I can understand it. I mean, there's a pre and there's a post 67 that you're talking about,
Speak
where you
up, Daniel. I can hear you.
you have the pre 67 mindset of the pioneer, also post Holocaust mentality of we have nowhere else to go. We're kicked out of every country in the world for thousands of years, and we had enough as a Jewish people, and we have Jewish interests that we need to guarantee, not so much for ourselves as actually for our ancestors that gave everything for us. We are almost at the point where our population is the same as what it was before the Holocaust, to my understanding, but we're not quite there yet. We think about all the Jewish lives that were lost, sacrificing for us to be able to live here, not just anywhere, but to live in Israel.